Oh, there it is.
People, and welcome to NP the Show. This is going to be a very, very different format here. It's definitely not Boyan, Laura, or Brogan. It is moi, Tywon, hosting, and today we have with us Miss Claudia Thompson and Mr. Vinny. And I'll let them introduce themselves. I'll let them say who they are right quick because I don't know them. No.
I don't know these people.
But we're gonna try this new format to see how things are and see where it takes us, see where it goes. We are just in the middle of so much going on in the world, and you know what? As we're mixing up things and doing better, hey, we're mixing up everything and we're doing better. So you get to see my bright, smiling face, and you get to see for a little bit. We'll see what happens. Yeah, we'll see what happens and how it goes. So we have Miss Claudia. Claudia, what is your name? Where are you representing? Where are you? Where
am I? I'm in my bedroom. My son said he was sleeping and he didn't want me to be in my usual office area, so I was like, all right. I'm in, so Claudia Thompson, I've been a part of November Project from pretty much from the beginning. Since 2012 was my first workout in the mothership of Boston. So I still reside here, and yep, what's up? Yeah, and that's it. So I'm calling in from Boston.
And Mr. Vinny. Where are you?
Hey y'all, my name is Vinny. That is my adopted name. If you want to know my real name, you'll have to do some work of your own. I am from the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I'm broadcasting here from my wonderful room, featuring young Vinny Fierce behind me.
The Tiger King.
Yeah, I've had this picture since I was a child. So this is actually like Vinny young, shoulders back, straight face, like before this all started. So.
All right.
Well, and I guess I can go ahead and just introduce myself. I am Tywon Thompson. I'm representing NP Dallas. I'm one of the co-leaders actually for November Project Dallas. I am a running trainer, running coach, yoga teacher, and I'm actually in my yoga studio, my home yoga studio right now. It is no longer my sitting room, nor is it my dining room. We have a chandelier in our yoga studio. So
that's fancy.
Bougie is what we call that. That's a bougie studio. Okay.
You have a buffet? You have a buffet in there too?
Here in Dallas. Been a part of NP since 2016. I started in July of 2016, which happens to be my birthday month. And this is actually the 1st of July, and my birthday is on Friday, just to let everybody
know. Oh, snap. So, shameless plug.
I'm looking forward to a lot of Facebook and Instagram posts saying happy birthday.
Yeah, I got you.
Shameless plug right there.
Yeah. That is so shameless.
Not so shameless.
That's what this is really about. This is actually all really about Tywon's birthday. This isn't even about.
He's like, we must do this on July 1st to plug my birthday.
Yeah, or I'm out. I'm not doing it. If it's not my birthday, I'm out.
Exactly it. No, been a part of since 2016, and let's see, in 2017 is when November Project. Well, we started off as We Run Big B under the leadership of Manuel Gonzalez and Harrison Kiefer, and
from Philly. He's from Philly. Harrison Kiefer's from Philly.
From Philly originally.
Yeah, that's true. Right. He's from Philly too. That's right. That's right. They started it, and we were pledging for it felt like we were pledging forever. But I was actually, how I got introduced to November Project is I was actually running a group myself of free workouts, and I was just training people, just doing it for free and everything. And then I came across this group of people that were doing it also. I'm like, look, this is a lot of time. I'm gonna let him do it, and So I sent people.
Oh, nice, nice. And now here you are doing it again.
Yeah, here I'm doing it again. I became co-leader in 2018. Yeah, 2018 and April of 2018, which is pretty awesome. And I have seen tremendous growth. I've seen a lot of changes, and let's just say I've seen a lot. Let's put it that way. You know, going on as a co-leader for November Project Dallas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I will say that I am proud to say that at the time, I was the second Black November Project.
Oh, we know. Vinny and I know. We know that. We were counting. But let me know if that's the part of the interview, if we're there yet. But yeah.
It wasn't even, at that point, I don't think it was even worth counting. I think it was just like.
It was literally, yeah.
Literally.
So I see Vinny, I'm like, oh, hey, what up? Yeah. Yeah.
So what we're doing today, like, we're just gonna have a conversation about everything that's like, well, we're gonna have a conversation. I'm not gonna say about everything, but we are gonna have a conversation just with what's happening in the NP spectrum, the NP world, and as well as like in our own lives, like our own backgrounds and so on and so forth. We're just gonna be here and conversate. Just going to conversate. That's pretty much it. And I guess I will start. We'll talk about our backgrounds, you know, how we grew up, and so on and so forth. And I'll make it short and sweet. Like I said earlier, I can talk. I enjoy talking. So if I look and I see like, I see the both of you like, oh my gosh.
You want to be like, wrap it up? I could put.
Well, you know, we can talk too. So. Yeah.
Let me know.
I'll text you. Like Tywon.
I know. It's too bad your wife left, because then she could be like.
Usually she'll like throw something at me or what have you, you know?
Yeah. That's cool.
I am the son of a preacher man. I am a preacher's kid. I am the baby of 6. And it's amazing. I am spoiled. I am not rotten. Growing up for me, and let me put it this way: we are talking about Black. Okay, we are talking about everything, the movement, everything that's happening right now. So growing up for me was different, a little bit different. I'm very light skinned, as you can see. I mean, this bright hat that I have on is not really helping at all either. But it wasn't tough. It really wasn't. It wasn't tough growing up. It was awesome, actually. I had what I needed. You know, my mom and dad, they supplied for us, for every single one of us, and it was great. Like I said, my family, my siblings that went before me, going through school, I went through school like a breeze. I didn't get in trouble. If anything happened, anybody said anything to me, they were like, oh, so you Marion's brother. Or you Virginia and Jack's kid. Oh, okay. What you need, baby? What you need? When we grew up, it was very diverse, and people took up for one another. They took up for one another, and we had our spouts. You know, we had our little quarrels, if you will, but it wasn't to the point to where it is now. You know, and I didn't really have to look at my skin color. I didn't really have to focus on that a lot. I was told that I'm Black, you know, and I was told that I was going to have to suffer for this, or it's going to be harder for me. That's what I was told. And my mind, it was, oh, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong. And that was how I wanted it. I strive to be. I wanted people to see that, yeah, I'm Black, and I identify as Black, but it doesn't mean that I have to struggle even more. It doesn't mean that a Black person can't really succeed, or that they can't be up there, you know? And that won me a lot of friends, if you will, and a lot of leadway further down in life, further on in life, till I got into how do you say, my college years. I moved to Utah, and that's when I was reminded again that I was Black. When a young lady in line, I was actually working at Kohl's, and the lady, the cash register was messing up, and the woman says, "This is why these people shouldn't be working using machines like this, handling money." I'm like, it's not even my fault. What in the world?
But it is your fault.
But what she didn't know is that I was also a assistant manager at the time, assistant store manager at the time. I was 18 years old and being an assistant store manager. So I called my manager up and was like, "Hey, I'm about to say some words. It's gonna go down. You might need to come up here." But again, I held it. I held it in and was like, really, I was nice. I was nice about it. I was passive. I just let her know who I am. And I took my badge and my card and like, "Hey, you can have it." I just knew I was fired. And I walked out, I didn't get fired. It was awesome. It was great. They backed me up and everything. So again, I went on in life saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm Black, but I'm gonna keep on going. I'm gonna keep going. I'm going to show you that I don't have to lose my mind. I don't have to go crazy and so on and so forth. What is stereotyped to be?" That's how it's always been. Always been. Vinny knows me a little bit better. Claudia and I, we haven't had that face-to-face contact, and if we have, I am so sorry.
No, we just missed each other when I was in Dallas, but it's okay. So no, you would have remembered. You would have remembered.
See?
Tywon sat on my lap. That's how close we are.
Yeah, that's so true.
Okay.
So true.
You might have sat on my lap too, actually. I think. So.
Vinny became
that anymore.
He became a Tywon selfie ambassador.
Right. Hashtag. Look it up. Hashtag.
And then I'll just fast forward a little bit. I love people. I do. I love people regardless. And my whole thing is that if I meet you for the first time, until you give me a reason not to love you, I'm going to love you. And I'm going to say I love you. Like, even after my colleagues, my higher ups, we'll come from out of a meeting, especially like with the city council members or the mayor or whatever, and I'm like, "All right, love you." And I walk up like, "Oh, what in the world?" It's just me. I love people, and my mind, my naive mind, my naive self, if you will, is that everyone. Why can't people just love? Just love people. My mom and my dad brought me up that way. Just always just love people, and you go on in life and enjoy life and just do your hardest or do your best. But do not forget where you come from. Do not always be reminded that who you are and what you stand for. Always be reminded of that. And I take that to heart. I take that to heart. I don't like to see people hurting. I don't like to see people in too much pain and I don't like confrontation at all. I do my hardest to just get past it and go on, and that's how it always was. But current events we kind of need to use our voice a little bit more,
Yeah.
I've been reminded of that. I've been reminded of that. I use my voice and my platform. And this is very different for me. I'm always the one that's like, if people come to me to like smile, or they're hurting, or they just want somebody to listen. And I'm like, if you want me to listen to you, honey, I'm so sorry. I'll listen, but I might say something.
Yeah, I might say a few words.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting listening to you speak about your upbringing, because it seems as though like there's a lot of like proudness and a lot of like who you were. And when I think about like how I grew up kind of almost wanting the same things. Like, why can't we just be people? I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood outside of Philadelphia, Cheltenham, Pennsylvania. And honestly, the biggest struggle and challenge obstacle for me was and I was an only child. So like, I didn't necessarily, like, I was the oldest and the youngest, and I was the only, I was spoiled. I grew up with a single mother. I had a father that was in and out of the picture, and a stepdad that was there for me, usually on weekends, that was there to really mentally nourish me and help me develop. And my mother had her own issues just being a provider on her own. She didn't really have much to give in a relationship with me, and that really often fell back on my stepdad, which is I call him like one of my heroes. But anyway, growing up in a suburb in a diverse area, my biggest challenge was always that I would hear the same message from two different sides. I would hear from Black people, you don't sound Black, you don't act Black, you don't, all these different things. And then I would hear from white people, oh, you're different, like, unique, like, and it's interesting because that led me to the same place where I think, I just desired wanting to, like, love people. I ended up kind of displacing myself from Black spaces. Really, it's funny that, like, I kind of grew up wanting to just love people, but really, I wasn't really in spaces where I was able to love. I didn't necessarily hate being Black, but I was very indifferent to it and impartial to it. And like Tywon, I didn't really allow that to really be a negative thing in my life, but I also didn't let it be an intimate and close thing in my life either. And so I grew up, a lot of my friends were like of different races and backgrounds and ethnicities. And I just learned at a really young age how to be comfortable in those spaces. Mm-hmm. I learned how to be, so, when I think about the Urban Project, and we'll talk more about this, I'm actually very comfortable in that space because I've just always been comfortable in spaces with people who don't look like me. And so fast forward to college, and even like in the workforce, I went to school at Lock Haven University, middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. And it's funny because that's when like I really started having experiences that were racially based, mm-hmm. but only and looking back at it do I realize I was racially based, because at that time in my life, since race was something that was displaced in my life, I didn't identify a lot of those experiences as being because I was Black. There were certain things that I did do just because I knew that I was Black. So for example, like I didn't drink when I was underage. I didn't like go to like crazy house parties. There are a lot of things that I just didn't think it would be wise, even as an individual, but even further as a Black male, to be in those positions. And honestly, I had no desire to be in those positions anyway. So, so that was pretty much like my college experience. I spent that, a lot of it nerding out, playing chess with friends, like being like getting very much into like the social and intellectual part of college, and then getting into the work field. Actually, Tywon's story about Kohl's actually reminds me of a really cool story that I have about, like, when I was working at Whole Foods and I was the cashier, and I was working in a very predominantly white area called the Main Line and outside of Philadelphia. And I remember I was very personable, so I would always ask customers about what they're doing, and I remember asking her, like, she was getting a bunch of snacks, and I asked her, like, hey, like, I want to go, like, where you're going with all these snacks, where you go? And she's like, oh, like, I work at a dental office, blah, 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 for the office. And I was like, man, like, I love to go to that dental office. And she said, oh, well, a lot of your people go to our office. And what was funny about that is that because like my curiosity peaked because I sat there for like whole minutes, like wondering, like I didn't take it as black, but I was also like, what does that mean? And so after a couple of minutes of me like trying to keep my head down and just like keep it moving, I realized she meant Whole Foods employees. But what's interesting to point out though is that like how maybe she might not have even realized that that's what was happening in my mind. And so just like experiences like that are very like kind of stand out. Like that's the kind of like racial interactions that I've had. They haven't been like very like overt in my mind.
Yeah.
But you know, I've been aware of them, but you know, I wasn't so close to them that like it brought about like an emotional like response.
Yeah.
And so that can be challenging, especially during times where a lot of these things are happening, where, you know, I kind of wonder, like, should I be more emotional,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. So that's just a little bit about my upbringing and kind of like where I come from, and how I've processed the world up to this point.
Before Claudia, before you go, Vinny, real quick, do you feel like you were putting on blinders like at all? Because I felt like I did. I felt like I was definitely putting blinders on to like what was actually happening, even growing up, you know, like or in college or what have you, and the work field. Do you feel like at some point there were just blinders there just because you didn't really want to see it, or you didn't really want it to like happen? You didn't want to acknowledge it. Let's put it like that.
Not even. I think no. It wasn't even blinders. It was more of like it wasn't. They weren't blinders that like I put up. It just became a place that I didn't go to. It just became like that place like that you just didn't go to.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't even something as simple as like blinders. It was more of like that room that you just never go to.
Yeah. I like that.
So it's even bigger. It's actually worse. It's actually probably even bigger than blinders. It's like this is a part of the house that I don't go to.
So it's interesting, and I wanted the piece. So what you're referring to is this story about me. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and in Staten Island, New York. So a lot of times people think New York City, very diverse, and it is. And I definitely saw people. Probably the first 10 years of my life, through 5th grade, I was majority around white people, and I was an honor student. So on top of that, if there were any kids of color, there was only like 1 or 2 in my class. So I was always, I got very similar to what I heard, especially Vinny say, you get comfortable navigating within white spaces because you have to basically learn how to survive.
Yeah.
During, probably even through 8th grade. So my first experience though with racism, it's interesting because I liked playing chess. I like cheerleading. I like things that are like white activities. So running, like things that like weren't deemed really for Black people. So I was like, if I want to do it, I'm going to just do it. It doesn't matter. Yeah. You know, I come from parents, you know, my dad is Afro-Latino and he's Panamanian, and my mother's from Jamaica. And so my mother really had a hard struggle in Jamaica, coming over, abandoned my parents, the whole thing. So we really saw, you know, education was really important for her, from my sister and I to have, and just hard work. So we're like, oh, if you work hard, you should be able to have these things, not really realizing about systemic oppression and racism and all that other stuff. So, and my mom moved us to this neighborhood so we could go to the good school, all of those things, right? In 3rd grade, I was, you know, walking home from school. There was a parochial school directly across the street from my public school. And we had a half day, but they were out in recess. And this was the first time I think I really experienced racism, that like very overt racism. And I was crossing the street, walking past the fence, and there were like kids that lived in my neighborhood that I knew. And they were like, you know, Blackie, like calling me names, throwing rocks. The nuns are just kind of watching, like, okay, Timmy, you know, come, like no one was outraged. And I remember like waiting to leave the end of the fence and then start, like the tears, I didn't have to force them. They just came out. And I went home and I told my mom, you know, my mom, you know, Black women are the most resilient women, I think, period, right? We just deal with stuff. I think a lot of you were talking about this. You know, Vinny, like to hear like, oh, well, we didn't have to worry. We don't go there because we're like, we just keep going. We just keep moving. And I think people are so shocked now because they're like, you know, people I tell these stories to, they're like, really? We didn't know. It was like, I was training myself that my life didn't really matter enough to share this information. So it wasn't like we went to the police. You know, fast forward years later, when I was in 8th grade, the story that I really talked about was walking with my best friend who is Hispanic, and we're walking down the street and someone, you know, these two guys were in the car and we're just laughing. It was like 4 p.m. and they pointed a gun and we heard popping, but it's like everything, the series, I really don't remember. I remember them laughing and shouting stuff and taking off really quick. When the light turned red is when they started shooting, and one of the bullets kind of grazed my cheek. And I was just in complete shock. And I think I broke shock a little when blood was like dripping down my face, you know? And I think in that moment, again, it was like constantly being reminded. So there was these overt acts that happened, but what I think impacts more is all the covert microaggressions that I experienced throughout. And I would never say anything. Like, I think because that happened in 1991, you know, I'm older than most people know. I'm in my 40s. But when I was in 1990, I know, okay?
You better do it, girl.
It don't crack, y'all. It's true. So,
yes.
shout out. I have a son in college and everything, okay? So I think for myself, I think, you know, being able to navigate in these white spaces and having the microaggressions from both sides, you know, Black people saying, you sound white, blah, 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 and white people saying, oh, I can't talk to other Black people, like asking all the questions. Can I touch your hair? Like, people would be, if I asked any white woman if I could touch her hair, like, that is, who does that?
Right.
But we always want to touch our hair, have every question in the world. And I used to be like, oh, cool, I'm a representative, or they feel comfortable talking to me, you know, not realizing that they're unconscious, implicit bias, whatever. You know, it was constant. And I think over time, you know, through college, you know, all of that stuff, jobs, you know, not getting promoted, having to do like 5 times the work to get recognition. You know, I'm one of the top reps now in my company. I'm doing really well. So I got a little nod, but they don't, you know, they didn't put a statement out for Black Lives Matter. They didn't check in on me. Like, it's still happening today. And I think that just now, you know, and I have a son, right? I have a son, he's biracial. My ex-husband is white. So my son is half, you know, so he's like maybe lighter than you, Tywon. But his hair, like, most people think he's Spanish. Like, he doesn't pass as Black, right? So that has its own set of privileges. And I don't even have to tell him. He educates himself on where his privilege is at and where he wants to have a voice and make a difference. And I think it's something different when you have a child that you have to protect, and you are constantly, you just never go to sleep. Anytime he steps out of my house, and as we know, even if we're sleeping at home, we could still anything could happen. But I think that never goes away. And it's been frustrating. So when we tie this into, you know, NP, I think for all of us, we have been used to kumbaya, you know, heal the world kind of mentality. We were used to navigating around white people, because I think the problem that has occurred is that for the Black people who have not been around white people, it has not been a safe space always, or a welcoming space.
Exactly.
And, you know, and I tell people, even at MP, I'm very outgoing, I'm extroverted, I can talk to whoever. I was most popular in high school. Like, I talk to everybody. I was voted like most outgoing. Like, I will talk to anybody. And for a year, I did not have any real close friends in MP for my first whole year of going. And I'm like what we call an OG of the OGs. Like, I you know, Black and white buff, even before the buffs. I was when BG and Boyd were running our workouts, I was in it. I'm one of those people. You know, I was, when we were on Good Morning America, you know, I got to be on Good Morning, like, you know, Vinny was there. You know, like, I have recruited people. I have done things. I've been a part of it. I've traveled across the world to be in races with these people. You know, and I think, but it's because I had a leg up because of the fact that I'm used to navigating amongst white people. But there's still those moments, you know, like we said, it doesn't stop.
Right.
And we're constantly reminded. So I think for me, Vinny, and I don't know if this is you and even Tywon, where we have never ruffled feathers, because we are the ones like, that's why people come to us, because we don't ruffle feathers. We might
Right.
not have posted Black Lives, like we believe that, but we're like, we won't say it because we
Well,
don't want to lose
yeah,
people.
this is what I've realized about myself. And I'll tell you the moment that I realized this. I noticed that, so there was a moment where, before our president got elected, where, and I don't really get super emotional about conversations around race, because I didn't really experience a whole lot of pain around it. There were a lot of microaggressions and things that might have influenced me in my displacement, but there wasn't like pain. Like there wasn't like a huge amount of emotion. That has kind of insulated me a lot. And so, so I remember I had a tough conversation on Facebook with an old college friend the night before a Wednesday workout, and we were working out at the Independence Hall here in Philadelphia. And I remember I didn't even want to like wake up and go to this workout because of it. Like I was so drained, I was so exhausted, and then I decided to like just get up and go anyway, because that's what you do when like things aren't going right. You just try and shake it out. And I remember getting to the workout and like, keep in mind where my mind is at. I just had like a really racially charged conversation that like in that moment wasn't emotional. But then when I got to the workout and we were bouncing and like getting ready, and like we were going through like, y'all good? Like that's when I looked around and I realized there's no one here I can talk to. There's no one here I can talk to about this. And like that was the moment where I realized that for so long I was really good at leaving my race at the door of whatever space that I was in, so I can be comfortable to have access. And I think that what ends up happening too is because I get comfortable in those spaces, I want everyone else in that space to be comfortable. Whereas like someone who might have more pain around their race and upbringing, they might, come into that space as a whole person with that pain, and it might be more uncomfortable for those people that like, me, you, Claudia, and you, Tywon, may have over time have just learned to like be more comfortable around and try and make it comfortable for them and like maybe like bring them comfort, and that's when I realized, wow, like this is a part of me that I have not built a relationship with enough. And I think that's why I use the word displacement. And I think that is really painful, because it's still a part of who I am. And it's just something that, like, again, it's that room in the house that I just don't go to, because if I really walk into that room, then I have to deal with so much like pain and like emotion that it's kind of like doing work that you don't want to do. It's like you don't want to do it. And like it, honestly, when you take a step back and look at it, it's like that work, putting that much energy into that room takes away from all the energy you put into the other rooms of the house that you might actually enjoy. And so like part of my journey has really been learning how to go into that room and like love it and like reconcile with that part of myself. But yeah, it's absolutely really a tough thing.
And I think that, it's so great that you said that, because I think that was the moment. We had some moments, right? Like there was like Charlottesville that happened, and I wanted people, I think as Black people too, we want people to be as mad as we are. And it's like when you go and people are like, come on, let's just jump and, or like they send like a blanket message of love. And you're kind of like, do you have my back? Like, is this something? And there were other groups, I think for me, where my relationship started to change with NP was kind of like when those moments happened, when there wasn't a real stance. It was kind of like an all lives matter stance, which is fine if you're going to be that organization, but know that you're going to alienate a certain group of people. And I think, again, and I would actually correct you, Vinny, and say that you weren't trying to make yourself comfortable. You were definitely trying to ultimately make other people comfortable, because that's what
right, exactly. It's a projection. Like, it was a projection.
I don't want to mess anybody up. And I remember one time I wore my Black Girls Run tank top to a workout, and I didn't want it tagged. I don't want nothing on it. And I remember I had that and like then wrapping my hair, right, because I didn't want to get it messed up. And people asking me, some people like, oh, so what's that in your hair? Like, oh, that's interesting or something, right? You know, just people like looking and it's different. And then people like, you know, but the Black Girls Run, I saw people like looking at my shirt. People I know now, and they probably would be embarrassed if I told them, like, I saw you glaring at my shirt when I wore this. And then, to be honest, I never wore it again there because I felt proud wearing it. That was an organization I had run with before NP. You know, I had started local in my area. Like, I was like really proud of the message and their mission. And then I felt like I wasn't allowed to wear that. I could wear shirts from other races and other running groups. That's cool. But like, I couldn't, you know, unofficially, I couldn't wear that. And I felt like, and like you said, those moments when there's stuff in the media and every time I'm crying because I'm worried about my son, you know, I don't feel like I had a space. There was only like a group of us who were Black that I could talk to. So if they're not there, it's like, okay, I'll bounce and I'll get through this workout. But I really wish I could actually talk to somebody who gets this and who is fighting for this. So I think, you know, it just kind of like we started to kind of seep out, and you see that, you know, and of course, like Vinny, when you and I met right away, I was like, oh, who's this Black guy? Like who is this? And then I remember for Summit, did I tell you, Vinny, when we were like at Summit here in Boston, I'm like, I saw from Baltimore, and I was like, oh, he's a co-leader? I almost fell off the stairs. And I go to Boy, and I'm like, yeah, we have one. We got one.
Man.
He didn't say that, but it was like, oh yeah, no. I was like, who is that? Like, what is happening? And I was like, but for me, I'm like, I shouldn't be excited that there was one. You know, it's like, what are we actively doing? And I think a lot of people too, a lot of white people actually were asking, like, how come we're not, you know, mixing with other communities, you know, urban communities, like, you know, or when there was a workout in Roxbury in Massachusetts, which is predominantly Black, you know, people like a third of the people that would normally show up. You know, I think that those are the kinds of things that for me have felt like they were unaddressed. And I was, you know, I did have a lot of conversations with Boyan, and he was actually understanding. Even when we went to Good Morning America, April, who was down in New York, she was a member, she was there. There was a couple of us you know, who were Black that were there. And it was like, some of us get to go into the studio. We play rock, paper, scissors, and like the losers got to go upstairs. And I saw it was all white people going up. And I said to Boy, and I said, hey, you can't send that upstairs. You need to send somebody Black. It doesn't need to be me, but you need to send, so he said he sent April from New York and her son. So I was like, you cannot, if we say we're for everybody, like, but that's always on my mind. And I could see that it wasn't always on theirs. So I think that is something, if NP wants to make a shift, that's the shift that needs to happen.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I think too, like, I think when I first got into it, I'll hit on it very briefly from what you asked me on yesterday, actually, Vinny. But going back to what you just said, Claudia, it wasn't that they weren't like always thinking about it. And the reason why they didn't have that in their mind because they didn't see it. You know, they didn't see it. And it wasn't because they were putting the blinders or they weren't trying to see it. I think it's because they really do want this movement to be open to everyone, and they want that to be portrayed, if you will. But like you said, I'm glad you said it. You can't say that.
I said it.
Yeah, right.
I said what I said. I can say what I want to say. So
yeah. If this is what you want, you can't send it upstairs. You can't.
Right. And I think so. So Vinny asked me on yesterday, what was the question, Vinny? Like, what was the question? How did you put it again?
The question was, do you feel like there's more pressure for you as a Black male leader at NP?
Okay, that was the question. And so when you asked, I was like trying to like message you. I was walking Sputnik, my dog's name is Sputnik.
I got it.
And I was like I was trying to walk and trying to text, and I was like, this is not going to end well at all. Trying to poop and pee and everything, but I was ready for it. And so, my response basically was a little bit of just a little bit of a response for it. But when before NP was started, like Manuel Gonzalez, he started We Run Big D. And Manuel was going every which way. And it didn't matter what your background was. It didn't matter your race, what have you. He actually brought in exactly what he was taught when he was in Boston. I think that's where he first
came from. Yeah, he came from here. Yeah.
Yeah. So when he was there, that's what they were saying. Like, it's go get everybody, go tell everyone. And he literally did that here in Dallas. And so it wasn't really difficult. It wasn't difficult for Dallas to really see diversity, because it's so diverse, and it's one of the most diverse groups out there. I'm trying to refrain from previous words that we used to use. So.
Good job. Good job.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Thank you. That's right.
You know, it's one of the most diverse cities of NP. And I think here in our bubble, like, everybody really is welcome. Everyone's welcome to come. And I always tell people, it's like, NP is open to whoever wants to be here. It's open to everybody. But NP isn't necessarily for everyone, you know. And so, because not everybody really wants to be around a lot of other people, you know. Not everybody really wants to jump up and down in the morning, like, you know, y'all good, you know, good morning. Not everybody wants to cuss, you know.
Right. Doesn't matter what, like, race or background you are. Not everyone wants to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it didn't really, like, to me, there was no pressure at all before becoming co-leader. And when I became co-leader, there wasn't any pressure as a Black co-leader at all. Like I said, everybody was there, you know, and me being a part of the community already, being being a part of city council and being a part of board of directors. And I wasn't on the city council, I just went to a lot of the meetings, but anyway, they knew me. They know who I am. But and then, like, being on the board of directors, being the chair of this, chair of that, yada yada, I'm in front of so many people. It didn't really dawn on me for NP itself, like, there was no pressure until I got to Mom in California. And I hope I am allowed to actually, like, say this. I'm going to say it, guys.
Just say it.
We'll cut this entire section out if we have to.
It should be very limited editing.
Air it out. Air it out.
But we get to Mom, and legit, I get out of the van, and I don't even see Kay. We're in the woods, for one. We're going up this mountain. You know that, like, stereotypical thing, like the movies, the Black man is always the first one to get killed. So again, growing up, I never wanted to be that. You know, it's always like the Black person is going to rise and yada yada. I was like, in my head, I'm like, we're going into the woods. We're going somewhere. This is crazy. I get out the van and I'm like, there's nobody here that looks like me at all. So,
yeah.
I'm like, oh man. But again, I brought it in and was like, hey, I'm going to make the best. I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to be Tywon, be who I am, and I'm going to make these people fall in love with me. That's exactly what's on my mind. And mind you, going back, I'm going to say this really quick, because I'm going to get really emotional. That morning that we left, I lost my grandmother. And we were supposed, that was July 11th. And I called Boyan and Brogan, and DG was in the car as well. But I called him and was like, hey, this is what's going on, and so on and so forth. And I almost did not go. I almost didn't go, but Brogan, he talked to me and he was like, dude, I understand you and I get it, and you do what you have to do. You be there with your family, be there for your family. But I feel like this right here, this time right now, is what you're going to need to like cut off all of the noise. And so I'm really happy that I went, because that was the same year that, I can't even remember the guy's name. That was the same year that the gentleman came and spoke to all of the co-leaders. And MOM, for those of you who don't know, MOM is called Meeting of the Minds. It's where all of the co-leaders come together and basically leadership. It's leadership retreat. That's what I'm going to call it. It's amazing. It's NP's way of really giving back to these 100 plus co-leaders who volunteer their time and efforts and minds, if you will, to put on these amazing workouts that you all get to see and get to enjoy and what have you. Even though you could probably go online and find something or what have you, you still won't find anything like November Project. I'm just putting it out there.
There's nothing like at 6 o'clock and it's time to rock bounce. I'm sorry. There's no bounce like it. You can't find that anywhere.
That's right.
Nowhere like it. Nothing like it.
That was my famous Monday stairs bounce that Vinny was.
That's what you said.
The guy, he was speaking and he said, if y'all are really trying to look like, and this goes back to what you're saying, what you said, Claudia, if you're really trying to look like you're like open to everyone and like is diverse, you're doing a horrible job at it. You failed at it already. Like, you could see it, you could see their mouth, like people's mouths just drop, but like they didn't drop, but you figuratively, like you just really like see it.
Yeah.
And it was something that they already knew, honestly. It was something that NP they knew this already. And the co-leaders that were there, they knew it. And they had been they've been wanting to know, like, well, how do you approach this? How do you approach that? Like, what do I do as a white woman or as a white man going into this predominantly Black neighborhood and asking them to come to this predominantly white movement and be a part of, and going there and bouncing up and down and yada yada and so on and so on. They had all these questions, and in my head, and not me, I just lost my grandmother, so my emotions were everywhere. So everything was going on, and I'm thinking, I'm like, y'all, just go talk to people. Just talk. I thought about Manuel, like what he did. Like he's a brown man. He's a brown man that is going to every single facet here in Dallas and speaking to people. Why can't we do that? What's so hard about it? What is it? And that's when I felt pressure. I felt pressure as a Black co-leader then, because it was like people, they didn't look at me like per se, but I felt like the eyes were turning, like everybody wanted to be like, so Tywon, what we do?
Right. Help me.
How we do? Help me.
Help me, teach me.
To be honest with you, in my head, I was thinking, man, if they ask me a question, I'm just gonna be like, oh no.
Yeah.
I just go out and talk to people. That was me. It was a lot. That's when I did start feeling a whole lot of pressure for it. And when I got out, when I left Mom, and it was beautiful. It really was. It was gorgeous. I felt like we as co-leaders we came closer together. We did. There were mistakes that were made, and there were conversations that were had. I couldn't really converse like I wanted to, because I did just lose my grandmother, and that was on the top of my mind. It was on the top of my head. Like my grandmother was no longer there, and she's the backbone of our family. She was definitely she's so strong. She was so strong, and it fell on me. It fell on me, and this year, well, in 2018, let's put it that way, we went to Seattle for a Meeting of the Minds, and Brogan Graham was like, okay. So, and I always refer to him as Brogan Graham. I hardly ever say BG or just Brogan, but Brogan Graham, he's like, Tywon, So last year, you know, you lost your grandmother and you weren't really able to really experience mom. And he's like, so I feel like this is like a redo for you. This is gonna be like your first time. You know, his broken voice, you know, like this is gonna be your first time, you know. You know, so he pretty much, he was like, I need you to dig deep, and I need you to express who you are. I need for you to express you, because I feel like there are people here that need to hear what you have to say. And that year, I'll be quick. I'll be really, really quick on this part. That year, just before the summer really hit, I was doing a presentation in front of a lot of people. And this would be my wife's first time. When she hears this will be her first time hearing of this. And I wasn't even gonna bring it up, but I'm gonna bring it up.
All right.
I was leading a presentation. I'm doing great, I'm going over it, and I'm like almost finished. I have maybe about 10 more minutes left. And the gentleman stopped and was like, hold on. No, he's like, hold on. Is this what we're doing? Is this what we're doing now? Are we just gonna let them take over? Are we just letting them take over? In my head, I kind of knew what he was saying, but again, I wanted to like dismiss it and say, and in my head, I'm thinking, oh, maybe he's talking about the young people, because I was the youngest one in the room. You know, I was the youngest one. And so like, I'm like, yeah, we're here. And we want some changes. We want some changes, you know? So as a young person, I'm going to like, put this out here I'm representing our young people. He says, no. I mean, like, are we just gonna let the Blacks take over? And in that moment, me being in front of a lot of people and it being recorded and what have you, I had to hold my composure. And I don't think it's fair, because I too wanted to like go off. I too wanted to express what I was feeling internally, but being in the position that I am, and also being a Black man, a Black brown man, let's put it that way, or which I have my reservations about, a person of color, not a POC, a person of color. I don't want to be an acronym. I was like, I don't want to display exactly what they want me to display. And what the stereotype that we're given, we don't all argue, we don't all just flip off the limb and just start being like, no, you're not gonna talk to me like that. No, we don't do that, you know? And not all of us do that. And I just had to hold my composure and be like, all right, so we're going to end this presentation here. Thank you all so much for your ears. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And I hope you consider my proposal, and you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I packed my things in my bag. I had my nice suit on. I don't wear a suit. I had it on that day, had my tie. And people were like, he's just ignorant, yada, it's okay. I'm like, it's fine. I walk downstairs, I get in my car, and I drive to the opposite end of the parking lot, and I just cry. Mm-hmm. I cry, I scream, and I'm yelling, because it's a shame that that is still happening, that that's something that we still have to go through, and that any person, I don't care what you are, no one should have to go through those ordeals. Let's put it that way, because I can't find a better word.
Yeah.
Just coming up. So, I actually, I told them that story. I told them, you know, what my experience is, and we were talking about identities and what have you, and that was the pressure that I had in Seattle, you know, as that Black co-leader, you know, and I'm happy that I was able to stand in front of them and just share a part of me, share the experience that I had, because I do love people. Like, genuinely, I feel like it at least. I genuinely love people. I genuinely want people to just see each other as humans, as a person, you know, not as a man, not as a black man or a white man or a black woman or a white woman, just a woman, just a man, just a human, just like I am. Yeah, you black.
Yeah.
Yeah, you brown. Yeah, you white. You know, you
Yeah.
you
know, that's so awesome, because I think the most important thing for everyone, for every human to realize, is that we're all multifaceted.
Yeah.
Like we all have a race, like a gender, like a sexual preference. Like we're so multifaceted, and being able to identify with each and every part of that is very important.
Yeah.
And, you know, thinking about your story, it's funny. So going back to the question of like, do you feel more pressure as a Black leader? I'm actually going to tell a story about why I think of there being a lot of pressure for me if like I were in a place of leadership. So kind of like how you had your story of like being in front of that crowd, and like that gentleman asked you that question. I want to tell a story like that. So and I told Brogan Graham this story. And I tell a lot of people this story because it really shows how insulated I am. So I remember I was working again at that Whole Foods, and I moved to a town 7 miles away so I could bike to there and bike back. And I would get to my shift on Wednesdays in the afternoon time, and I would ride my bike back around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night in a rich, predominantly white neighborhood. There was one part of the bike trip where it wasn't very well lit, and so I'd be very careful. And it was also very like curvy. So I was riding my bicycle, about to hit this part of the bike ride, and I hear clanging on my bike. And so I wanted to hop off really quickly, pull over to the shoulder to make sure my bike was good before I went down this part of my path. Now, of course, as I was doing that, checking out my bicycle on the side of the road in the middle of the night, a cop car rolls by. Again, like being aware of race, but not having it at my forefront, I just thought generally it was just pretty weird to have this person on the side of the road 10 o'clock at night. So as I went to kind of pull away and just like continue my trip, obviously I got sirened down. And so like in my mind, it was like, okay, here we go. So cop asked me, you know, what's going on? Like, you know, you all right? I was like, yeah, like I thought something was going on with my bike. I wanted to make sure it was okay. They asked me for ID. So again, like easy question, easy thing. Hey, here's my ID. I have nothing to hide, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, the conversation kept going and going and going. You know, where are you from? Like, why are you here? Oh, I work at Whole Foods. Like, it's very close. I moved here because it's a bike ride. Or why does your ID say this town? Well, because that's in this suburb and it's far away. So I didn't feel the need to get it changed. I don't drive. I ride a bike. So, you know, for me, these were like easy questions and easy answers because I had nothing to hide.
Right.
It wasn't until one cop finally like decided to just go in. He was like, so Vincent, have you ever been to jail? And like now, normally when I tell that story to people, everyone that I tell it to, they're like shock level goes like through the roof. Like, he asked you that? But I want to tell you something. In my mind, I didn't even think of it as like is this because I'm Black? I thought of it as that's just a really odd and unprofessional question. Like, because like I gave him my ID, couldn't even look it up, but I still had that like that urge to be like really witty. And so the only thing I said was, no, not yet, right? Not yet. And so they let me go, and I was fine. Now, why I want to bring this up is because, in terms of like my question about leadership, is because I didn't walk away from that conversation hurt. I just walked away like feeling odd. And so when I think about, I've been going to MP Philly for about 6 years, since 2014 or so. And when I think about when I think about if I were a leader, I think that like when it comes to my upbringing and how displaced I feel from the Black community at times, I almost feel like there will be more pressure because I almost don't feel like I have like I don't know if I would be in a place where I don't think I've reconciled enough with my identity as a Black individual to really feel like I would be one who could be a leader and actually represent Black people in a way that they would feel like I should. And I feel like, and part of that is my own personal work that I have to do. And so in a way, I feel more pressure because of that, because not only am I like running the workouts, you know, trying to bring positive energy and like working through everyday life, but then I also feel like I have this added pressure of like representing emotion, like on different levels emotionally, like for a group of people that I have kind of I've found myself like grown apart from throughout my life. And so that's been really, really challenging to really wrap my mind around. And so that's why I kind of asked you that question, because I felt like like when I thought about me being a leader, I think of myself as a leader on the ground, like where like I think I can make NP what I want of it. And I try and encourage people, anybody, to really come to NP and make of it what they want to. Yeah. But I think really, again, it's that room that I don't want to go to. Like it's that room, like being able to say like I'm Black, I'm a co-leader, like, and speaking up about Black issues, that can be very challenging for me sometimes, because I haven't had that like emotional response that you had when like you walked away from that conversation and you just had to be like, I gotta go cry, this is hurtful. Like I don't have that response, and I feel like that in a way I need to reconcile with myself and become more whole before I could feel comfortable with leading other people of color. And I think that's a challenge for me.
First of all, I told BG this like a while ago, or maybe I told Boyan first, but I was like, I think when Dan Leo left Philly, I was like, oh, Vinny's in line to become co-leader. Like that, he should be the co-leader, you know? And when you weren't named co-leader, I was kind of like, okay, so, all right. So then it's like, to me, you were the obvious choice. And then you trek around in your hoopty to 2 countries, you know, like to visit in every group.
A PT cruiser, all right?
Okay. Well, I mean, my bad. So whatever you were driving, but, well, you were telling me, you're like, oh, my car is acting up. And I was like,
yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, to me, and I feel like I have done this myself, and I think this is and Vinny, I'm just now, I mean, a lot of times we offer stuff to allies, to non-Black folks, like advice or like read this book, but I have been doing the work myself only for recently in the past couple of years, myself dealing with my own anti-Blackness and dealing with, am I the one to speak for Black people? I'm Black. I have gone through experiences. So I would say, you know, you don't have to have some level of Blackness or whatever. I think if there are some Black people out there actively anti-Black that are, you know, I'm not gonna even give them names, but I know you know who you are, because we have had conversations. But I think for you and I, we've had these survival things that we operate out of, because we don't want to go there. We don't want to lose people who we've identified as safe, and then we also don't want to you know, again, ruffle feathers to a place of like NP. But at the same time, I feel like, again, giving our all, doing all these things, you know, where are the accolades? You know, I know very few Black people who've won the Positivity Award. You know, I know very few Black people, again, that are not named co-leader. It's like, even if you see somebody come a couple times, do you give them the Positivity Award? Do you honor them? Do you call them out? You know, like it. So I think that there's like that level. And for me, like I said, I noticed it immediately. And my first thought was like, oh, okay, they didn't, all right. So I don't know what he has to, if he has to like do something like, you know, juggle fireballs or something. I don't know what he needs to do to like actually get this, because he is, if I think of someone who is like eats, breathes, and sleeps NP, it is Vinny.
Right.
You know, he is one of those people. Right. So like that, again, I think these little things to think about. And I expressed these, recently with Brogan and Boyan, and I think it's fine. And I think another thing too of like actively, you don't have to go into the communities. I mean, that speaks to the people that if they're like, I have to go find people in these communities, you're not even engaging with Black folks. Like finding people that are actually integrated in the communities, or why don't you look at who's running, like a Harlem Run? Allison was part of MP at one point. Why don't we find some of these other Black groups and collaborate with them and actually amplify their voices and their platforms, since NP has a strong presence. So I think, but these little ways that we can honor the people that do show up would make a difference. And again, I think for myself, and I didn't notice it, right? I was fine with it. These little things that didn't happen are okay, it's fine. It's not a big deal that they haven't reached out to me. They don't know if I'm dealing with something, but they reach out to this person or that person. And I think, having these conversations and communicating this kind of stuff, this is the kind of work that has to be ongoing for people. And I'm not saying, and I know like BG and Boyan, of course, they were like, I think they had said something like, they thought more of like, we want all abilities to come. It's not just for like the Olympic level, or if you were like a very strong athlete, we want everyone to come, which is what I loved. I think what's what we all like embraced. It was like, you can hug people and I could show up with no makeup. I could come through like, like that was a part of it that I loved. Like the very core of NP is what I love. And I've connected, some of my very best friends are from NP, like that I've gotten to know. They showed up, a lot of them came to my 40th birthday party. Like we traveled together, but I think again, there's like this part where, because a lot of them haven't been exposed to people, Black people specifically, but even people of color, where they come from, especially because we're in these metro cities. So most of the time, most of the people are not from the city, like you are, Vinny, and you grew up in Dallas, right?
No. I'm from Virginia, actually.
Okay, so yeah, exactly. Well, to me, it's like tomato, tomato. It's the same. In my world, it's below the sometimes. So yeah, but but what I'm saying is that Boston is filled with so many people, and Dallas, and and I think if we start, but even some of these cities like Philly, like in Atlanta or Baltimore, that are like very Black, they're like very heavily populated with Black folks, but the not that, I almost said it, the groups of people are not that. They are like not representative or reflective of the communities that they are in. I think that that's an issue. I think that that's a major issue. So I think that's what another piece of it has to happen. Why I think it didn't matter, because Manny was brown. So there were a ton of Hispanic folks. When I remember when they came up for Summit, I was like, Manny, yeah. Like he was like, right. Like we were like, yeah, that's what's up. Like it was like the most colorful group of everybody, of every city. And I was like shocked again. Like I shouldn't be that shocked from these cities that have definitely lots of Black people. So I think, so I think, again, though, for myself in my own life, having so many, I mean, I'm not going to share any other personal stories because there's just so many. And then living my life through my son's eyes now, it's just seeing it again. It's like it never really stops hurting, or ways that we have to survive. My son is he doesn't care. He speaks out. He owns his Blackness. He's like, nope, that's not right. And he'll say stuff. And I'm like, no, don't. You can't speak. You can't say anything. You're going to get in trouble. You're going to get arrested. Like, don't, So I think that we have had, Vinny, and I think that's why you and I have always been cool, because we had that similar. But I think for yourself, just offering for yourself and anybody else that's watching this, that thinks that they are not Black enough or well-versed in something, that you can always do the learning as well. There's plenty of resources. There's plenty of opportunities to unlearn what instinctively what has happened with us, which is internalized racism. So
yeah,
to that, like a little takeaway real quick, like I should have put this at the beginning of everything, but I cannot emphasize enough, and I don't know how the two of you feel about it, but for me, I'm going to put it out there: vote. Go out and vote, and really vote.
So that's at a minimum, vote.
At a minimum.
But I would say not just vote.
Right.
Don't just vote for not Trump. because that does not make you
right.
racist.
Exactly.
FYI. Don't just not vote for, or just like, yep, I put my vote in for, you know, and I'm good. It's not about that. You need to know who is running stuff at the city level, at the local, you know, state level. You need to know your city. I know my city councilors too. I know every single one in Boston and the towns around it. I'm a delegate myself. I know exactly what is going on. Every law that is in place, you know, any questions that are on a ballot, you really want to be educated on that level, because that really matters more. It's not always the president, you know, is whatever. It really matters at the level of local. And then also educate yourself on what policies are in place. And, you know, that's the key. But of course, obviously vote. You can't complain. You don't get to complain if you don't put yourself out there to vote. But there's more to do. And then there's so many grassroots organizations that have been doing social justice work for a really long time.
Yeah.
There are tons of, again, we have Audible, and we have, ebooks that you can just like go at the drop of a hat. You don't have to go to the library to get them or order them. That you can find out, you know, crowdsource amongst your groups and your cities and ask who's reading what. You know, I know that we've been doing some of that here. Yeah. So I think that a lot of it is not, I don't know where to go. I don't, you know, that's like, they didn't always have the internet in my day. So you're lucky.
Right? Yeah. We have to walk back uphill both ways.
And also too, like, while we're on this roll too, talking about like things that we can do, I think it's really important to really connect it to the actions we can take within NP, because we started on a lot of things. I just want to like round it up, like bring it all together, because that's what I do. I connect things. Everything in the world is connected. Talking about like how Manny built NP Dallas, talking about how we vote, and then talking about like how important it is to like be active at different levels. Mm-hmm. One thing that, you know, is really important is understand that co-leaders have a responsibility, and anyone who decides that they want to show up also has a responsibility. And I think one thing that Tywon mentioned when he found Manny and MP Dallas is that Manny invited everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think that what tends to happen a lot is whenever we want to connect with people, we look for the path of least resistance, right? And so it's easy as a runner to invite someone who is going to say yes, another runner. It's easy to invite someone who we are close in proximity to, who looks like us, who hangs in the same places. Those to us are easy yeses. This is why a lot of people don't go into sales. People don't like getting no's. People don't like inviting people that they size them up. They're like, oh, well, I'm not sure if they're gonna like it. Why would I want to invite someone to something that they're not gonna like? But we all know that the greatest November Project stories happen when someone just simply invites that person that might not have saw themselves as a runner or whatever, and maybe that person doesn't show up right away. Maybe they're not as excited, but then maybe 6 months later, a month later, or a year later, they decide, you know what, like, I'm fed up. I want to make some changes. That person invited me. Like, I'm going to show up. And then their life changes. Yeah. And so I really want to take that actionable step to like everyone on the co-leaders, like they're in their huddle, like trying to do their work and figure that out. And like networking, stuff like that, that's something that they can do. But everyone on the ground, reach out to people, reach out to everybody. It doesn't matter if you think like they want to or not. If they say they're not a morning person, invite them anyway. If they say they never ran before, invite them anyway. Like it's not easy work, but it is actually very easy. It's as simple as like, hey, like we have this workout group, like 6:30 in the morning, like, you know, you're welcome to come. Like you don't have to size people up for a yes. Like, and I think that is something that is very simple that we can really, really all do. So I just want to toss it out there because I want to boil that down in terms of like the social justice and action and how that can really translate into our everyday actions and really make it more inclusive. And I was talking to, one of my co-leaders, John Combs, about this. And like we were talking about how like, we were talking about how like coronavirus right now, COVID, might be an actual really neat opportunity for us to restart. Like all of us can like restart. Cause like honestly, when most of us go back, like half of us, honestly, y'all, like we're gonna be like out of shape a little bit. I am. Like, you know, I'm not sure about y'all, but I run like maybe like twice a week at the most. And like, so I'm gonna need some help running the art museum steps, you know, for 45 minutes. So like, this is a great time for this movement to really restart and really like redirect ourselves. And we should all see it as an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, so to bring it back, because I too am a connector, to bring it back to anti-racist work that can be done more effectively than recruiting, because I think recruiting is fine. Why everyone feels comfortable in Dallas is because Tywon's face is there. And why they feel comfortable in Baltimore is because Kick's there. Like, they feel comfortable because they see themselves. You know, and again, in every social circle and professional circle that I'm in, I'm often the first person that they see. So things become more diverse because there's representation in the room. Yeah. So I could say, come to this thing. I know most Black people were like, we always look like any other Black people here. Like, is this safe? Is this safe?
We always find each other.
This is the white people mess. Like, that's even, you know, again, even growing up, that's always our go-to. Like, you always look for other Black. It's like no, you could say that you don't and you don't see color. That's a lie. Black people always are looking for, are there other Black people here? Is this going to benefit me? And is this, you know, and I think that's the issue, you know, like, I feel like that, you know, that needs to be, and you can't have more co-leaders if there's no people. I get that. If there's no representation, if there's no actual members there, you can't just, you know, recruit from outside. You need to have someone who has the values inside. So, but again, that goes back to, yes, talk to everybody, but if you're not actually even interested in getting to know other people besides people that look like you, people that you've deemed safe or approachable, then that's a problem. Like I said, I went to NP in 2012, you know, right after they started letting more people in, and then I didn't go back for a while because I didn't feel super I felt like I could totally hang. I did the stadium full tour like the first time. Like, I was like, because I was like in crazy shape at that time, and I did it, and but I didn't feel connected to the community. It was kind of like I saw Sebastian there. Right, I saw Sebastian, but I didn't really see a lot of Black people. And then Rosa came in afterwards, you know. But I think if we're gonna do this work, like, actually look in your life and see how you can actually reach out to communities of like people that you can get engaged and get connected to. And I'm sure like a lot of you have met people, but you just really were never connected. So I think that's part of the issue. Right. Oftentimes we recruit from people that we're around, and right now we're technically not around anybody. So I think that you have to actually get interested in that, and then when people do show up, engage them. You know, don't have them feel, you know, at times I get it too. It could be very cliquey at a lot of the groups, but you know, open up and like be, you know, welcoming, so that someone feels that they could come and approach you. And then don't do it out of obligation, or that's because that's what we do. Like, actually be interested in getting to connect and relate to these people, and I think that will be helpful. So I think that's my thoughts after dealing with everything that I've dealt with. That's what I would say.
So good. I am excited. I'm really excited. Like, this is a great conversation, like with the both of you. I know we were trying not to keep you all on here long.
This is awesome.
It's a lot. I mean, yeah.
I love it. But you know, this is something that we're trying. We're trying something different, trying something new, what have you. And I want to say that I am honored. I really am. I am honored to like lead in this group, in this big umbrella, if you will, this worldwide movement. I am honored to be a co-leader. I am honored to be able to have this conversation with two amazing members of the NP world that have impacted this movement tremendously. And like, I think I speak for everyone on all sides when I say that it is definitely a privilege to like see your faces. It is definitely It's reassuring.
We're here, folks. We're here.
like I love it. I truly love it. Real quick, and I'm gonna let you all go. I want to keep you, dude.
Yeah.
Broken Graham told me that I could like make it my show, make it Tywon show. So I'm here.
Yeah.
The Tywon selfie show. We're gonna do a Tywon selfie. We're gonna do a Tywon selfie. Like,
you know, we should. You know, we're gonna screenshot it. We are. You know what? We're gonna do that. Actually, I'm going to do it with not.
That's why I'm an ambassador. That's why I'm an ambassador.
We gotta do a Tywon selfie. So Claudia, if you've never been in a Tywon selfie, basically what it is it's. And that's
Okay.
it. That's it. You have the tongue out.
Like Jordan, Jordan. My mom is gonna be so proud.
Really, I think the whole takeaway from all of this is we as people want to do better. We need to do better. We have the ability to do better. So go out there, do better, be better. This movement, when all of this started happening with after George Floyd and what have you, and Brogan Graham and Boyan and Laura, they were all hurt. They were hurt because you know, they felt it, and people from around the MP globe, they felt it. Everyone was feeling it, and questions arose as to if November Project, how much forward are we going? Like, what are we doing to do better? And I have seen tremendous growth in November Project. I have seen, yes, there's a long way to go, but there's a long way to go for all of us, for every organization out there. It's a long way to go. And I do want the co-leaders around the globe, I want the members around the globe to know that yes, we can all do better, but just know that in this day and time, you are already better. So we appreciate you. I love you. I'm sure Vinny and Claudia, I'm going to speak for them too. They love you too, okay?
All right, I love them.
Yeah, no, be good, be kind to one another, and just go out and share a smile. Just know that we're all humans. We're not men, women. We're all beings in the same place at the same time, and just wanted to live a better life. Love you all. Thank y'all so much. Thank you, Vinny. Thank you, Claudia, for being here. Y'all are amazing. You made this an amazing time, amazing moment.